over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning, warning.
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart. You can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it.
Right! You tell them I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio. All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
Good evening. It's Celebrate Truth Radio. And I'm your host, Robbie Davidson. We got an echo. Oh. So let's get that on as far as the countdown. Saw the countdown was still on. Anyways, thanks so much for tuning in. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to read the Times piece that just came out. I highly suggest you do. It's called The Secret History of the Shadow Campaign That Saved the 2020 Election. Guys, it is a must read. You have to see it for yourself. It's unbelievable what they are admitting. Honestly, the author Molly, she gleefully makes claims that a secret cabal joined forces across the country to stop Donald Trump from winning re-election using methods such as manipulation legacy, social media coverage, getting elected officials to change election laws, and using a network of big business and union workers to manipulate voting machines, vote counts, and push back anyone questioning the integrity of the vote. Just unbelievable. If you have not read that article, please check it out. Just do a Google search for Time. Type in Time Cabal, Time Magazine Cabal if you want. That will probably pull it up, but it's called The Secret History of the Shadow Campaign That Saved the 2020 Election. It's absolutely extraordinary. Everything that it documents, it's quite a lengthy piece, but I think it is worth the read. I know that circulating on social media, it is unbelievable what they are admitting to, they're excited about. And this is what we're seeing right now in America is the takeover. The takeover is complete. Unfortunately, this is the reality. Guys, let's not start thinking fantasy land, thinking that all of a sudden just you're going to wake up tomorrow and everything is going to go back to normal. It's not. They always talk about the new normal. Well, What we knew is not coming back. That's true. The question is, what do we do preparing and getting ready for the world that we have now entered into? It started off with the whole CV, everything back in 2020 of March. Remember the, 2 weeks to flatten the curve? Yeah, 10 months later, here we are. It is continuing on. It is getting worse as we definitely see the communist Marxist takeover of America. And the takeover, I believe, is complete. And tonight we're going to go into a lot of documentation to show you exactly how all the pieces have come together, what they're aiming for. I've mentioned this on the broadcast many, many times. The Great Reset, something you really need to look into because they're very serious about it. Agenda 2030, the UN, all these things are something that you have to look into. It is unbelievable what's going on. So without further ado, let's jump right now to Glenn Beck. And we're going to start with the Biden oligarch secretly running America. Then we're going to go into seeing how basically what Obama kind of set to do is now continuing forth. And he never really has left. And we're going to see exactly everything that's been set up, everything that's getting ready. And we're in for a wild ride. I've always said that 2021 was going to be even crazier than 2020, and I still hold to that. I think 2022, 2023, the next decade is going to be insane. In the next couple of, I would say, years, the transformation that's going to come to America is going to be startling. And when I say America, I'm also saying the whole world. That's right. In order for any agenda to be fulfilled, the destruction, or I should say the implosion of America as far as the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, all of these things needed to be taken care of. And one by one, we're seeing this happen, all predicted, all planned. You know, we didn't see exactly how all this stuff was going to come together, but I'm still shocked at how quickly all of this came to be. It came together so incredibly quick, just with a blink of an eye, and they're not done at all. A lot of people are saying, oh, this is going to be around forever. What we're dealing with right now with the virus, all that. I can tell you this one thing, that when it does start settling down, when it fizzles out, when whatever, because a lot of people think, oh, this is going to be around forever. Well, no, I don't believe that it will be. I do believe that at some point they are going to kind of take care of it, whether it's through the miracles of modern science or what a great government. Look at, this is exactly what we needed for the world. And this is exactly on the right path because look what we're able to do with all these global initiatives and, you know, with health scares, you know, the war on terror, all these type of things that they've been talking about for a long time. So I think that we're going to see, I'm not saying the next couple of weeks, but I'm thinking definitely in the next year or so, we will see that kind of peter out. But what is coming, I think, is even worse. And it is going to be the fear of climate change. That's right. Climate change is going to, I believe, escalate to a level we've never seen as far as the urgency getting on board. And anyone that doesn't, anyone dare, is a science denier. You're now regulated as someone that is dangerous, worse than a terrorist, someone that definitely needs to be taken care of. Not even re-education will help. Someone that is that cold, that would definitely want the planet's destruction is what they're going to say. I think that the climate change agenda is going to go full force. This is going to be the thing that pushes everything forward beyond what we've seen. It will be climate change. It won't necessarily be a pandemic. It will be climate change. So that's what I think is coming. And there's a lot of scientific data to support the fact that there is no conclusive evidence whatsoever that man is indeed creating warming. We see patterns like this all throughout history. That's for another program. Check out my work, Scientism Exposed. I touch on that as well as other topics showing the difference between science and scientism. And it's good to know what scientism is. Check it out. You can go to my online store, celebratetruth.org, celebratetruth.org. I have a special right now. Buy Scientism Exposed DVD and get the sequel for free. Or if you buy the sequel, well, you'll get the first for free. Either way, you'll get a free DVD if you order one. If you order 4, you get an extra one as well. So I'm throwing in an extra DVD free for any order that takes place here for a limited time offer. I know many people have jumped on it. I haven't been mentioning it too much on the show itself, but as you'll know in the 24/7, I've got links in there. But at celebratetruth.org, again, you can watch my movies, documentaries for free on my channel, youtube.com/celebratetruth. So feel free to watch them on YouTube. But if you do want the DVD and you want to lend them out, that's a great way to do it. But climate change, remember I've said this, February 6th, 2021, I'm saying in the next year to 2 years, climate change will become the biggest threat to humanity, even worse than the pandemic itself, is what they're going to claim. And I think that is where the next agenda falls through, what their plans are with businesses, with corporations, just with everyone is going to have to do their part. So that's what I think is going to happen. And I guess we'll see what goes on there. But let's get into it, because I think this is really important matter. I wouldn't be doing a special broadcast if it wasn't for all this information that has been researched by Glenn Beck. He's done an extraordinary job seeing how Marxist and the communist revolution would take place in America, how it would be taken over. And I mean, if you go back even 10 years, 12 years, 15 years with his research, he was spot on, and he's calling it right now. And he's not just saying, hey, guys, it's coming. He says it has happened. We are now living that. It is not like, oh, let's prepare for in case. It is here. It is done. The question is, what happens going into the future? Let's go down throughout the history, going to what we got to today, and also seeing how everything was progressing for the last, I don't know, decade or so.
I will always level with you. I will defend the Constitution. I'll defend our democracy. I'll defend America. Thinking not of power, but of possibilities. Not of personal interest, but the public good. And together, we shall write an American story of hope, not fear.
Yeah, I don't buy it. The Biden administration has already been busy creating a lot of possibilities, but they're all motivated by power. And tonight, I'll show you how. I'll show you how Team Biden is well on its way to conducting a monumental shift in our nation that will change it forever. No longer will our most powerful leaders in government be beholden to you, the voter, but instead be beholden to a group of elite businesses, corporations, and international interests in a way from which we may never recover. Welcome to your new stakeholder government. Biden's cabinets, advisors, and closest allies now all sit on this country's board of directors, and they'll make decisions regardless of what you, the American citizen, desires. So what was that, Joe?
Not of personal interest, but the public good.
Yeah, still not buying it. And after this episode, you won't either. Tonight, the Biden oligarchs secretly running America. Hello, America. 2 weeks ago, we talked about the merging of government and private industry as part of the Great Reset, which the left cannot wait to accomplish while America is paralyzed by this stupid pandemic. If you haven't watched that episode yet, which is really part one of tonight's show, I urge you to go back and watch it on blazetv.com. One of the pillars of the Great Reset is stakeholder capitalism. It is so vital that you understand what stakeholder capitalism is. I went into about an hour on just that today on today's radio podcast. Stakeholders, instead of shareholders where you're buying stocks on the open market, you're a stakeholder now. So you can own shares, you can be in the company, or you can be represented by your government, because the government will be a partner in a public-private partnership. So instead of just shareholders now, you're a stakeholder. And if you think you're not represented, don't worry. Your voice will be heard through your elected officials in Washington. Now, the stakeholders, it's no longer the interest of the stakeholders to make money. Instead, it's to serve the interests of the stakeholders, causes like climate change and social equality. The Biden administration is now applying the Great Reset concept of stakeholder capitalism to the government. And there's some disturbing news today. The administration is no longer accountable to you. Instead, it serves the interest of certain stakeholders who take priority over you and I. But remember, you and I are a priority because we're being defended by those elected officials. These stakeholders have a vested interest in the actions and policies of the government, financial interest, ideological interest, and too often both. Tonight, I'm going to show you how this is already playing out in the Biden White House. And there is new news on this every single day. Now, hopefully you remember me talking in part one about a company called Blackrock. It is the largest investment firm in the world with almost $8 trillion under their management. There are enough connections between Blackrock and the new Biden administration to make a strong case that it is one of the stakeholders that I'm talking about. Blackrock is also influential in the Great Reset, founded by Klaus Schwab and being talked about this week in Davos with the World Economic Forum. In fact, Blackrock's CEO, Larry Fink, is on the board of trustees at the World Economic Forum. Fink was in the running to be Biden's Treasury Secretary, but he decided to stay at Blackrock instead. Other connections between Blackrock and the Biden White House include longtime Biden senior advisor Mike Donilon, whose brother, Thomas Donilon, is the chairman of Blackrock Investment Institute. He was also the national security advisor to President Obama. Then there's Brian Deese, most recently Blackrock's global head of sustainable investing, now the new director of the National Economic Council. And Wally Adeyemo, he was the senior advisor at Blackrock, and now he's the deputy treasury secretary. And yet another Blackrock executive, global chief investment strategist Michael Pyle, has now been named chief economist to Vice President Harris. This means that Pyle and Brian Deese will be working closely together on policy, and they will be officially the first pair from the same Wall Street firm to have jobs as the top economic advisors to the president and vice president. Remember how everybody said how bad Goldman Sachs was? Even Goldman Sachs has never been in that position. But don't worry, you're a stakeholder, and the Biden administration has your best interest at heart. They say they expect these guys to recuse themselves from any issues related to Blackrock. But if you have $8 trillion in investments, everything is related to Blackrock. Even some hardcore progressives are not buying this. Matt Stoller from the left-leaning American Economic Liberties Project told the New York Times Blackrock needs to be broken up and regulated. Blackrock CEO Larry Fink knows this, so he's been storing hack Democrats on ice so they can go into the Biden administration and make sure that that doesn't happen, end quote. Now, it would be out of character for Blackrock to push their weight around like that. I mean, of course, right? Their worldwide strategy involves developing close relationships with governments to get an edge on the competition and to sidestep regulation. That's their real MO. Over the last 16 years, Blackrock hired 84 government officials from around the world, and the strategy obviously works. BlackRock now holds 5% or more of the shares of almost every company traded on the S&P 500. BlackRock also is now so powerful that during the pandemic, the Federal Reserve Bank hired BlackRock to help advise it and buy bonds and funds on its behalf. You know, just the further merging of government and business, which the left has always loved. Where are the people on the left that always accused the Republicans of being in bed with big business? This is it. This is when America becomes an oligarchy. I told you about BlackRock 2 weeks ago. I mentioned their plan to stop investing in any company that gets 25% or more of its revenue from coal operations. Sounds very noble and very green of them, right? Officially, BlackRock is totally on board with the big climate movement. I mean, you kind of have to be if you're involved in the Great Reset. But it's interesting that BlackRock doesn't single out other fossil fuels in the same way. Could it have anything to do with the fact that BlackRock is the world's largest investor in fossil fuels? It has $19 billion in Exxon stock alone. plus large investments in Chevron, ConocoPhillips, and BP. I don't know how any of these people sleep at night. Just $1 of Exxon stock is enough to give Bernie Sanders cold sweats. Well, Bernie better hold on to something, maybe hold on to your mittens, because Blackrock is in talks with the Saudi government-owned oil company Aramco to buy a $10 billion stake in its pipeline business. And in 2019, Blackrock closed a $4 billion deal for a 40% stake in the oil pipelines of ADNOC. That's Abu Dhabi's national oil company in the United Arab Emirates. Also in 2019, Blackrock opened an office in Saudi Arabia to pursue investment opportunities there and in the wider Middle East. They're doing this at the same time we're canceling the Keystone Pipeline. Isn't that weird? By the way, that was less than a year when they started to invest in Saudi, less than a year after the Saudi agents murdered Jamal Khashoggi, the journalist who dared be critical of the crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman. The brutal murder of Khashoggi really deeply bothered BlackRock CEO Larry Fink. I mean, deeply, for about half a second. Weeks after Khashoggi's murder, he was one of the CEOs who said, quote, he's making a big deal out of pulling out of Saudi Arabia's future investment initiative, also known as Davos in the desert, end quote. Now, just a couple of months later, BlackRock decided, I don't care that much. They opened their office in Saudi Arabia, and Larry Fink said, and I quote, the region isn't perfect. No region in the world is perfect. The fact is, there are issues in the press that, it doesn't tell me I should run away from this place. It tells me we should run to that place. Really? Putting journalists in a blender like making daiquiris makes you want to run there? Somebody should maybe report that comment to the DNC because it doesn't sound very woke. The left has canceled people for a lot less than, murder, dismemberment, want a daiquiri? Speaking of murderous regimes, BlackRock also is about to start taking major cash from everybody's favorite, China. Last August, BlackRock got permission from the Chinese government regulators to start a mutual fund business in China. Oh, and it just happens to be launching at the same time that a new president is taking office who knows all about special finance deals with China. Isn't that a coincidence? BlackRock's deal is a joint venture with China Construction Bank, the second largest bank in the world, which of course is owned by the Chinese Communist government. Now, why does that sound familiar to me? Well, if you're on the left, you're like, it isn't familiar. But if you're like everybody else in the country, you're like, oh yeah, because Hunter Biden's special deal was also a joint venture with another Chinese government-owned bank, the Bank of China. BlackRock's deal will open to the market for its management investment for Chinese citizens. Well, I mean, not all Chinese citizens. You got those Uyghurs, and the Chinese Christians and the Hong Kong freedom fighters. I mean, we can't have everybody in there, And there might be some other people the Chinese decide to lock up, and maybe there's some people over here that the American administration wants to lock up. Who knows? They can't invest. But other than that, everybody else. Next, I want to show you another stakeholder a little closer to home. It's the one that President Eisenhower warned us about exactly 60 years ago. And boy, did he turn out to be right. When you think about somebody stealing your home, you're like, they can't. I mean, I don't live in a mobile home, so I got that one covered. Except they can. It's called home title theft. And what they do is they file an application. It's easy to do. I'm not going to tell people how to do it, but it's really actually easy to do. It costs you about $30. And you could do a quick claim deed. And with the quick claim deed, all of a sudden they own your house. Well, they don't go and then show up and say, I'm taking your house. They go to a bank and then they take, take out a loan of, $250,000, whatever they can. And then they beat it. They go to another country. And then you start getting the eviction notice because the bank is repossessing the home that you now no longer own. Your life is destroyed. Home Title Lock will make sure that nobody does that. And if it's already happening, they will spend $250,000 in legal fees to get your home title back. Go to HometitleLock.com, register your address, see if you're already a victim, then use the code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. That's code RADIO at HometitleLock.com.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic process.
Hang on. Oh, is that over? I'm sorry. I'm just drop a couple eyes in there. I mean, Fink does. I'm making a Fink drink. If he doesn't mind, doing business with people who basically put people in blenders, why not? Anybody for a little Khashoggi? I mean, I'll save it for Larry. There are a couple of eyeballs in there. Larry, there you go. Not a problem. Invest away, my friend, in Saudi Arabia. Okay, that was President Eisenhower. That was his farewell address in 1961. Gee, if we only would have listened back in 1961, maybe the defense contractors who are now going to become major stakeholders wouldn't be major stakeholders in the United States of America. There are a handful of Washington, D.C. think tanks that wield a huge amount of influence in U.S. military and foreign policy. All of President Biden's major State Department intelligence, national security appointments worked at the highest levels of the Obama administration. Okay, but what have they been up to since? Have they made any drinks with the Saudis? Well, many have been working at major foreign policy think tanks, and these think tanks all kind of have something in common. They are mainly funded by the top 10 defense contractors. Now, one of those influential think tanks, the Center for a New American Security, was co-founded by Michelle Flournoy. She was Undersecretary of Defense for Policy in the Obama White House. She was the frontrunner to be Biden's defense secretary, but that job ultimately went to General Lloyd Austin. She co-founded with Biden's Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, a strategic consultancy firm called West Exec Advisors. I'll come back to that later. Other Biden White House officials coming from the Center for the New American Security include the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines. Well, she was formerly on the CNAS Board of Directors. And the new Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, Colin Kahl, well, both Haines and Kahl also worked in the Obama administration. But 7 of the top 10 defense contractors fund the CNAS. So here's an example of why that might be a huge problem. In December 2019, the CNAS issued a report on the need for the government to spend big on AI research. Then, right after the election, Joe Biden proposed to do just that, innovation funding of $300 billion over the next 4 years. That's weird. I hope he has somebody to advise him what to invest in. Biden's new Deputy Secretary of Defense, Kathleen Hicks, comes from another influential think tank, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, as does Wally Adeyemo, the former Blackrock executive who is now the new Deputy Treasury Secretary. Now, I guess this is all just an amazing coincidence for these amazing doves who just want peace, that the exact same 7 out of 10 top defense contractors also fund the CSIS. Then there is the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. It gets its funds from 3 of the top 10 defense contractors, for peace. The president of the CEIP is William Burns. He was Deputy Secretary of State under Obama. Well, he's the new CIA director. A former senior fellow at CEIP is Jake Sullivan, who's now Biden's national security advisor. He was Hillary Clinton's right-hand man while she was Secretary of State, which means Sullivan was right there right there helping with all that great foreign policy of the Obama years, like Egypt, Libya, Syria, Benghazi, Yemen, emailing on Hillary's private server, overseeing and pushing the Steele dossier, all of that stuff he was center in. I mentioned William Burns and Jake Sullivan because they're also the duo who conducted the secret back channel negotiations with Iran for the nuclear deal. Remember when we flew all that money and just left it at an airport? It was these guys. They met with Iranian officials at least 5 times in 2013. And according to the Associated Press, even while formal negotiations were going on in Geneva, quote, the State Department went to great lengths to conceal their involvement, end quote. Oh, I love secrets. Re-entering the Iranian nuclear deal is now one of Sullivan's top priorities. Now, could there be any additional motive for him wanting to re-engage with Iran? You see, after Obama left office, Sullivan went to work for Macro Advisory Partners, one of these D.C. strategic consultancies that are basically lobbyists with a fancier name. Conveniently, strategic consultants don't have to register as lobbyists. So Macro Advisory Partner says it works just to help clients navigate geopolitical risk. Now, before the election, the firm's website promoted its work with clients in the Middle East. But for some reason, those references have been deleted. Macro Advisory Partners have also removed any reference at all to Jake Sullivan having been a partner at the firm. Now, maybe that's because of a report from the American Prospect, which is a progressive publication, by the way. Sullivan provided, and I quote, forecasting services for corporations. For example, he used knowledge he acquired from negotiating the Iran deal in the Obama administration to help companies profit from the opening of the Iranian economy. Oh my gosh, if this were a Lifetime movie, I'd be in the shower right now rocking back and forth and I just can't get clean. Anybody else feel raped? A Biden campaign advisor who declined to be identified for fear of retribution said, quote, Jake Sullivan's work at Macro Advisory Partners should be disqualifying him from service in a Democratic administration. We don't need a tool of hedge funds and mining companies in the White House, end quote. Too late. Dennis McDonough, is it McDonough? Is another partner. What is it? McDonough. He's another partner at the firm. He's now Biden's new Secretary of Veterans Affairs. And guess who's in on the firm's global advisory board? The new CIA director, William Burns. It's a cute little family. Earlier, I mentioned I would come back to West Exec Advisors. And that's because after Obama left office, the firm was co-founded by Michelle Flournoy and Antony Blinken, who's Biden's new Secretary of State. So what is it that they do? Well, Michelle explained that her firm works with, quote, people recently coming out of government, mostly deputies who have current knowledge, expertise, contacts, and networks. We help U.S. companies that are working overseas deal with those external risks that might affect their business. And we help tech firms who are trying to figure out how to sell in the public sector space. How we help them navigate the DOD and the intel community and law enforcement. Oh, West Exec. Golly gee, when Mom finds out, she's going to give you a big hug. West Exec has a strategic partnership with Jigsaw, Google's in-house think tank. Back in 2012, Jared Cohen, the former Hillary Clinton advisor who founded Jigsaw, emailed Clinton when she was Secretary of State, pitching a Jigsaw project in Syria that would promote rebellion against the Syrian government. I love that. Jake Sullivan allegedly described it as a pretty cool idea, end quote, which I think is what Sullivan says about every U.S. intervention in the Middle East. Whoa, Jude, that's pretty cool. Want a glass of blood and eyeballs? Another one of West Exec's strategic partners is Pine Island Capital. Flournoy and Antony Blinken have served as advisors to Pine Island. Just 3 weeks after the presidential election, Pine Island raised over $218 million for a new fund to finance investments in, come on, you'll never guess, businesses in the defense, government service, and aerospace industries. Wow, it's like we got a lot of people who are just counting on war. This new fund is called Pine Island Capital Partners. In addition to Michelle Flournoy, guess who else is on the team? Yeah, General Lloyd Austin, Biden's new Secretary of Defense. Not only have these Obama veterans profited handsomely over the last 4 years from their insider knowledge, they're now prepared to reinstitute the disastrous foreign policy that will keep many of their clients happy and rich. The same Obama team that's now working for Obama approved the U.S. support of Saudi Arabia in its war against Yemen. You know, the one that just stopped. Raytheon alone has booked $5 billion in arms sale to the Saudis during the war in Yemen. That level of business, I mean, they have kids to put through college too, you know. And yet we're all supposed to believe that as soon as the Obama veterans step back in the White House, the State Department, the Pentagon, they're just going to put their public servant hats on and magically ignore all the for-profit interests they've been working on for the last 4 years. Unfortunately, defense contractors aren't the only stakeholder that is a giant to be aware of in the Biden White House. Next, everybody's favorite, what could go wrong? Big tech. Does Blinken know how, I mean, really, or Fink, does he know how much of a mess blending a journalist actually makes? I don't think he'd like them so much. Joe Biden has been elected. Our new Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, is at the wheel of your financial future with all of this stuff going on. First thing he told Congress was, we're going to go big on money printing stimulus. It's not real good. You know, Zimbabwe comes to mind. So how do you protect yourself? Well, you have to be aware. You have to pay attention now more than ever. And if I might suggest, put your money in something that will be of value if the dollar does collapse. May I suggest precious metals? That's one of the things that I would recommend myself. Don't listen to me for advice. You're smart enough to figure it out. Goldline is offering a huge promotion now on their self-directed IRA acquisitions for retirement accounts. Before the dollar crashes, please call and find out how to protect your long-term retirement portfolio with physical precious metals. Also, Goldline is running an extremely limited inventory special on their legal tender bar cards. These are something that Goldline and I went to the Canadian Mint and we designed. They are minted by the Canadian Mint. They're little teeny 1/10 of an ounce gold bar that you can keep. I asked my wife to keep a card if we're ever traveling. Keep one of these in your pocket or your purse. You never know if the world melts down. It's money that everybody trusts. For every card purchase, you're going to receive a 1/2 ounce pure silver bullion coin at no additional cost. So get them before they're gone. Call now. They're standing by, waiting to hear from you right now at 866-GOLDLINE. 1-866-GOLDLINE. All right, so now let's get to big tech. They're going to be another major stakeholder in the Biden administration, and conservatives especially really don't understand what that's going to mean. We're starting to, with the cancellation of Parler and the shutdown of Facebook and Twitter accounts. Landscape is changing, but I don't think you have any idea how bad it's going to get. This is why when you're listening to what I'm about to lay out, please become a subscriber at blazetv.com/Glenn. Use the promo code Glenn. You'll save 30%. Please do it. This may be, in some point in the future, the only way we can have contact with you. And who knows, we may not even be allowed to bank at some point, so it might be free while it lasts. Please support Blaze TV, blazetv.com/Glenn, promo code Glenn. Now, you don't become a big tech stakeholder by being a wallflower. So Facebook has already been trying to suck up to the new White House. Facebook is promoting vaccine and climate change information on its platform, including promotion of the U.S. rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement because Biden has made such a big deal out of those things. Now, you might think Facebook sucking up to the Democratic Party is old news, but not really. Not like this. Lately, progressives have been some of the loudest voices wanting to regulate and break up companies like Facebook. So big tech has to walk a tightrope of still wielding its massive influence while not annoying the wrong progressives. They need a public-private partnership with the government. One way Facebook plans to stay on Biden's good side is by making Nick Clegg, its head of communication and global affairs, the main point of contact between Facebook and the White House. From 2010 to 2015, Clegg was the British deputy prime minister. Well, he and Biden apparently hit it off well when they were both in office and have stayed in touch ever since. Pen pals, when nobody uses pens anymore. Big tech isn't sweating the Biden White House too much, however, because Biden's team is basically the old Obama team. So what does that mean? Well, after Obama left, all those people either went into think tank consultant world, with defense contractors, or to big tech. And just like the think tank crowd, the big tech crowd is now back in the White House. There's Cynthia Hogan. She was a White House lawyer for Biden when she was VP. But since 2016, she's been Apple's lead lobbyist. She left Apple in April last year to join the Biden campaign, where she helped lead Biden's VP selection process. And no surprise, that process led to Kamala Harris, who has her own longtime cozy relationship with big tech. Here she is hanging out with Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg at Facebook headquarters in 2015. Harris was California Attorney General during that time, when she might have used her office to pressure big tech to show some restraint, but she didn't. When Harris ran for U.S. Senate in 2016, she actually received $214,000 in campaign donations from big tech companies. Sheryl Sandberg personally donated the maximum allowable amount to Harris's Senate campaign. A Freedom of Information Act request for over 1,400 pages of emails from when Harris was in California and the AG show that she generally, quoting, viewed big tech as a partner rather than a threat. At times, she even teamed up with tech companies to market herself as a rising star in American politics, a depiction that proved correct with her election to the Senate in 2016, end quote. Another big tech lawyer, Jessica Hertz, left her job at Facebook's D.C. office, where she helped Facebook navigate the Cambridge Analytica settlement to become Biden's White House staff secretary. Twitter's public policy director, also a former Obama administration guy, left Twitter to join the Biden transition team. Biden's campaign tech policy committee includes several current and former executives at Facebook, including their current director of global competition policy, Howard Solansky. He was also on the tech committee. He's a partner at a D.C. law firm where he has been representing Facebook in the government's recent antitrust probes. Good, now he's on our side. The tech committee also includes employees from Amazon, Google, and Apple. The people on this committee received a list of rules which told them not to discuss their participation, quote, on social media such as Facebook or LinkedIn or your professional bio. They also were warned not to talk or share names of other committee members, not to talk about conversations or communications, and especially do not talk to the press, end quote. Again, more secrets. I love those. Biden's agency review teams that recommend candidates for the hundreds of federal positions that the administration has to fill, are all staffed with dozens of employees from big tech companies, including Google, Amazon, Facebook, Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, which is Mark Zuckerberg's philanthropy wing, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Airbnb, LinkedIn, Lyft, Salesforce, Uber, and Stripe. Stripe, the online payment processor that recently banned the Trump campaign website. The one that would take your credit card so people like me could stay in business and actually have access to banking. So what does this all mean? Well, according to Reuters, quote, researchers, lawyers, and consultants tracking the transition or working with the team told Reuters that the moves are part of a large effort made by many large tech company officials to influence future policymaking. Wow, Reuters, I don't know how you do all that deep thinking in one day. Perhaps the biggest tech titan throwing its weight around D.C. is Google's former CEO, billionaire Eric Schmidt. He now chairs a committee based at the Pentagon called the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence, which advises Congress on developing AI for defense. What could go wrong, Skynet? From that position, he's been making personnel recommendations for the Defense Department and is being considered to lead a White House technology task force. Interesting side note, Schmidt's vice chairman on the AI Commission is Robert Work, the former Deputy Secretary of Defense under Obama. Work is also a principal at West Exec Advisors. He also happens to be on Raytheon's board of directors. And West Exec just happened to have Eric Schmidt's philanthropy as one of their clients. I mean, this is great. It's one big happy family. In 2019, 1 month after Schmidt stepped down as CEO of Google, he invested in Rebellion Defense, a startup military AI firm. He's now a board member there. Next thing you know, 2 people from Rebellion Defense wind up on Biden's transition team. Not bad for a startup that's barely a year and a half old. But after all we've learned so far tonight, really not much of a surprise. Eric Schmidt, in his official consulting roles with Congress and the Pentagon, passionately advocates for America's military and intelligence agencies to adopt more AI. This should terrify you. Then, as the billionaire investor in military AI companies, he turns around and sells that tech back to the government. Working at the intersection of big government and big stakeholders, a great gig if you can get it, is John Kerry. Oh, he's one of those. And he ushers in the last of the stakeholders. Next. Stephen, did I send you the video of my dog Uno running down? Remind me tomorrow, I'll give it to you. My daughter took this video of Uno, he's at the end of the hall, and Tanya just says, want to have dinner? And he runs to his bowl and just laps it up like it's going out of style. This is a dog that we used to have to actually feed by hand. And if you didn't have to feed him by hand, you put it in the bowl and he was actually interested, you'd have to stand perfectly still. And if you moved, he would stop, he'd look at you, and then he'd walk away. And you are done. We couldn't get him to eat. Now he runs to the bowl. And it's not food. This is rough greens. It's not dog food. It's vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and all that crap that we're all supposed to have. Your dogs need it too. It'll promote his health. It will help him live the healthiest life he has, and they love it, and you love it. Get a Jumpstart bag today. See for yourself. See if your dog will eat it. Mine love it. $14.95. Start the process of getting your dog healthier and happier. You want to see your dog thrive again? Go to roughgreens.com/Beck. That's ruffgreens.com/Beck.
A cry for survival comes from the planet itself. A cry that can't be any more desperate or any more clear.
Yeah. There's one last urgent stakeholder for the Biden White House, and it's big climate. And this is so important that you go back and watch the episodes on the Great Reset. Just go listen to hour 1 or even the first half hour of of today's radio podcast to get yourself acquainted with the Great Reset. It is urgent. All of this comes back to what they're doing in Davos today. Now, President Biden has appointed his longtime friend John Kerry as the administration's climate czar, and his position has never been elevated like this. No czar has ever sat on the National Security Council until now. In fact, President Biden vows that climate will be a primary focus of the National Security Council. Apparently, Biden sees the climate issue as, quote, having a foothold in virtually every foreign policy and national security issue. Really? Yep. Today, he officially made it a national security issue. Now, Team Biden insists that John Kerry's role will be limited to climate issues, and yet, where will the former Secretary of State have his new climate office? Inside the State Department. Yeah. I love the timing here with this and the UN. Just happens to be the time when the UN has released its new urgent climate report just a few days before Biden's inauguration. And this report warns that countries must, quote, work faster, allocate more resources towards adapting to climate change across both the public and private sectors. Well, it's great. We're putting together public and private partnerships in Davos. Democrats now control Congress. New unelected climate czar Kerry is on the National Security Council. So there's the public sector poised to work faster and allocate more resources. What about the private sector? Well, let me take you back again to Blackrock, the world's largest investment firm I discussed earlier, the company with almost $8 trillion in assets to invest. The company that has 3 executives who have now taken positions in the Biden administration. Well, we just passed the 1-year anniversary of Blackrock announcing that it will place climate change at the core of its investment strategy. BlackRock's CEO Larry Fink said, quote, I believe we are on the fundamental edge of fundamental reshaping of finance. Great. Maybe it's just the fundamental reshaping of the way companies rake in the cash that the government rains on climate initiatives and then blocks everybody who's not a part of the party. But hold on a second. Remember earlier I told you about BlackRock working on a $10 billion deal with Saudi Arabia's state oil company for a stake in its oil pipeline business. So how does that reconcile with the sudden commitment to making climate change the core of its investment strategy, which is making money on oil? Or are they making money on climate change? Here's the best thing about these people. The answer is both. You don't get to $8 trillion in assets by letting your conscience be your guide. Is that Jiminy Cricket? BlackRock would never veer into climate change as a business strategy unless it's going to be very, very big business very soon. And how can they be so confident that it's going to be big business? Well, here's what climate czar John Kerry told NPR recently about this opportunity.
I do believe the marketplace actually has the ability to be a very powerful force for good and for things to happen. And politicians can kind of get in the way and provide some road bumps, but they're not going to stop what's happening now.
They're not going to stop what's happening now. Political debate and compromise are at the core of our system. But did you hear what he said? Politicians are not going to stop what's happening now. He's saying it is our way or the highway. But if you're walking, riding a bicycle, or driving an electric car, of course you can come on in. You're in. If you're not, you're going to get run over. For decades, governments all over the world, including the U.S., have been tossing money to the wind to combat climate change. The U.S. Government Accountability Office reports that between 1993 and 2017, the U.S. itself spent over $154 billion on federal climate change activities. Yet somehow, even with all that insane spending on who knows what, apparently we're more at risk of death by climate change than ever before. Biden administration talks about it being a desperate time, and there's no miracles coming. As if the U.S. has never spent a dime trying to save the climate. President Biden was quoted as saying his new improved National Security Council would, quote, ensure that the needs of the working Americans are front and center in our new national security policy making, end quote. Wow. When you see the Made in America office, which I like to use the acronym MAO, that he just put in, he means average Americans that agree with his climate policy or are on board with Davos or, our labor unions. How many working Americans, regular Americans, do you know who actually consider climate change a need that should be front and center in our national security policy and the Treasury, like Joe Biden does? I hate to break it to our elite Democrats, but your disproportionate passion for the climate change does not move John and Jane Doe on Main Street, USA. It's almost as if you're using this for another agenda and you don't care anymore, even though they have lost their jobs or their small businesses just in the last year. Believe me, they don't give a rat's hat about your green initiatives and your Paris climate accords. They have a much bigger fish to fry, like actually finding fish to fry to feed their family. The tone deafness here is astounding. Read the room, Democrats. Or do you even need to anymore? They're not going to read the room, and I don't believe they need to anymore. Their priority for the Biden White House is the big climate industry. John Kerry sums it up very well.
What is clear is that the marketplace itself globally is moving in this direction. Real business people, real leaders within the business world understand that this is an imperative. They also understand that there's money to be made in producing the products.
Boy, please do your homework on the Green New Deal and the Great Reset, because this is just obscene and terribly frightening. There's money to be made in producing products. Well, that could be the Biden White House motto. No matter what you thought of Donald Trump as president, the fact is he was elected from a feeling of desperation among many Americans to change the narrative in Washington and actually do what they say. After 8 years of Obama overreach, voters looked at Hillary and said, I don't want any of this kind of corruption. I don't want any of this stakeholder bullcrap. Well, fast forward 4 years, and we're not back where we started from. We are in worse shape today because they spent 4 years plotting and planning. For all of now President Biden's talk about bringing the nation together, the only thing he's truly bringing back together is the old band from the Obama White House and corruption at a totally new level. We have actual term limits for presidents. There are no term limits for presidential teams. Therefore, the Obama administration is getting another crack at things. They know how the system works, and they learned. And they also learned that you better act fast in the first 100 days and definitely the first 2 years, because that may be all the time you get.
And things are truly heating up. I mean, there has been so many people being fired now. I don't know if you saw the latest news on Coca-Cola, but they've sent out a memo to all the legal firms that represent them. And if they are not woke, as you would say, they have a certain amount of hiring that they believe in these initiatives, then they will be canceled. The cancel culture is so out of control. It is unbelievable. It truly is like living in a Twilight Zone episode, a real bad one. I mean, you see everything that's taking place right now. What was it? There was a country music singer that was just completely canceled. I think they were number one on iTunes and just doing phenomenal. I forget the name offhand, but I guess the person was intoxicated, said something, and that's it. In this world now, there's no apologies. There's no mistakes. If you make one and they don't like you, then they are going to erase you. We're seeing this with Amazon. We're seeing with the digital platforms. Guys, there's so much more coming back. We're going to get into more Glenn Beck and other things. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after these messages for Hour 2. Celebrate Truth Radio. Don't go anywhere.
The media is wetting itself with excitement.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Hello, Karl Marx here. Look at my wonderful hair. Notice how I sweep it back.
Karl?
I call it the 360 sweep. Beard, sideburns, and the magnificent coif.
Karl!
What? What is this?
You're on the radio. They can't see you.
Oh, yeah, I get confused.
Want to learn more about the Marxist agenda and other important stuff? Listen to The Ultimate Remedy with L.B. Bork, Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Eastern, right here on Revolution Radio.
This is Barbara DeLong, host of Nightlight Radio, inviting you to join me on a cosmic journey, exploring a metaphysical montage of spiritual material, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between, including spiritual readings for those who seek enlightenment. Let Nightlight provide you with equal measure of light, love and laughter, insight, wisdom, and inspiration. Monday nights, 10 to 12 p.m. Eastern, right here on Studio B, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
All right. Thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Now, we're going to get back to your host.
Welcome back, Celebrate Truth Radio. This is Robbie Davidson. This is episode 97. It is February 6th, 2021. What a year, guys. It's been absolutely crazy so far in the first month and, a week. It's unbelievable how much stuff is happening. Just the cancel culture. There's headlines coming out every day. I believe that Biden did more executive orders in 1 week than the last 5 presidents combined in the first week. This is phenomenal what we're seeing take place right now with the tech giants, just with everything, the censorship. That's why you got to support stations like this, Revolution Radio. Join their Patreon, support them any way you can, because once YouTube is gone, once Google's gone, once all these platforms are gone, there will be other avenues, but it's really tough to get the message out. That's why it's great to support stations like Revolution Radio, 100% censorship free. So many different, so much content on this station with over 100 hosts, different radio broadcasts, including Celebrate Truth Radio. Thanks so much for tuning in. Everyone tuning in on YouTube, really appreciate it. Want to say hello to all the great mods that are helping to maintain the chat there. Everyone that is on the chat in Revolution Radio as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. 2021 is shaping up to be an incredible year. If 2020 taught us anything, we can't really be surprised with much anymore, the way things are going. And so much is happening. So much is happening. It is sad. It is sad to see that America, the Republic, is no more. I mean, it is gone. They are looking to completely transform America from scratch. New history, new ideologies, everything from, a lot of people will look at it like they were trying to attack the Constitution. And what people need to understand is they figured out a way that they don't need to take down the Constitution. And by that, I mean, as long as you have the corporations doing the work for you, there's nothing in the Constitution. What the Constitution states is that government will not interfere with people's rights. But what we're seeing right now with the tech giants and with the corporations is now there as private businesses are mandating certain things. And who's going to stop that? Why would they stop that? Again, that would be going against the Constitution, correct? Right? Private businesses should be able to do what they want to do. as long as they're not, breaking the law. But what we're seeing right now is them going full steam ahead, canceling, eliminating, erasing a sitting president of the United States. This doesn't even happen in the most craziest countries. And yet in America, United States of America, this is happening. This has happened. Now, if they can come for the president, believe you me, they will come for us all. We are seeing just the beginnings of this. The very, very beginnings of this. It's laying the groundwork and away they go. The silencing, the censorship. We thought censorship was crazy in the last 5 years. It's like, oh, they're censoring us. They're shadow banning us. Now they're full on canceling you. Not just taking you off social media, going after your livelihood. Whatever job you do, whatever corporation you work for, it doesn't really matter. This day and age, if all of a sudden it gets back that you posted something on social media, I'm not telling people just to stop doing what they're doing, but I would say that you have to start being very, very smart and careful with what you're doing. And if you believe it's the right thing to do, then go ahead and do it. But think these things through. These will come back, I believe, to haunt many of us as far as the words that we just throw out there. As far as sharing certain things that you see on social media, double check it. Do you know how many times I see stuff? And it's like just a quick search, you could find out that's not true. But yet people will share it and they reshare it as it's fact. And really, it does bring a bad name upon anyone. And your credibility, your authority on any type of topic diminishes once people see you sharing stuff that really has no validity whatsoever. I would say that out of all the quote unquote Simpson prophecies or Simpson, I would say that 80% are fake. Yeah, 80%. There's a couple of them in there that make you go, But 80% that I seen floating around or whatever, all fake, all drawn up, not even part of an episode. People won't even look in. Do you find it interesting that every time you see these clips, these images, why don't you see the actual clip from The Simpsons? Show because you know what? It would take too much work for someone to actually, do that all up as a cartoon, right? But it's pretty easy to just throw something together, say this was on an episode, and no one does research. Well, this is what we're seeing right now with so many people posting stuff continually over and over and over again on social media. And I think that's part of the lie. That's part of the agenda, is where they can get people to start doing this to discredit the entire truther type community. So much of the truther community has been poisoned, whether it's the QAnon, whether it's the false prophets, for Christian evangelicals. The entire thing has been set up in such a way to basically take people down a certain road, maybe of hope, but of ideas that are so preposterous sometimes, people will cling on to it. And you're like, guys, it's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It is unfortunate that a lot of people will stick to it, think that things are still going to happen. Oh, maybe next week. Oh, maybe March now. March, supposedly Trump's supposed to come back and save the day in March, and he's going to overturn everything and he'll become the president again or whatever. All I'm saying is it's fantasy. And sometimes you have to just wake up, and it's unfortunate. Maybe he'll run in 2024. I'm not sure. Maybe that will be the case. Maybe it won't. But regardless, I think right now we're on our own. And what I mean by that is before, everyone that was rooting for Trump, it doesn't matter. It's not even about Trump or Biden or right or left. It's about fighting for those principles and those rights that are good and wholesome. When it comes down to what was right, Trump was kind of fighting those battles for most people. Okay, whether you believe it or not, the fact of the matter was, it was like, good on Trump. Look at him. He's speaking on the media, mainstream media. He's calling this out. He's calling that out. He's gone. He's not calling out anything anymore. All right. No one really is. And the people that are suffering, immensely. So we really now, we have to all step up. We all have to step up. We have to talk to our neighbors. We have to one by one get this message out and talk about it, because I think it's bigger than just smaller issues now. This is about the loss of the United States. It's almost like, how do you reclaim it back? Do you see it the way it used to be? Do you believe in those rights? This is what's happening so much in our culture, is that people are looking at these issues, but yet there's something so monstrously big going on with the Great Reset, with Agenda 2030, this whole thing. We used to talk about this all the time on Truther channels about, there's this, conspiracy, there's this New World Order, and they're planning all this stuff. Guys, they've implemented it. It's like done. They've already secured it. Now the question is, what's next? What's coming? Right? If you knew that there was horrifying things coming down your path in the next few years, what would you do right now to prepare? Would you just be sitting around, just do, nothing really to do? Or would you really start warning people and preparing people? I mean, if you knew that, like, Nazis were basically about to take over and do what they were going to do, you'd be terrified. You'd be on high alert. You would be warning people if you knew it was 2 years around the corner. Well, I think with what we're seeing, there's horrifying things that are about to take place. They've been talking about re-education camps. I mean, these are things that like truthers have been like talking about, like, oh, FEMA camps and re-education camps. And they're openly talking about it, saying that 80 million Americans, anyone that voted for Trump or that is a conservative, Christian, or white person, whatever they're saying now, needs to go under re-education because they're sick and they're not healthy. And it's not just a bunch of crazy people saying this. This is literally governors. These are mayors. These are elected officials. These are people that seriously believe that we need to go this route. We have to cleanse. They've used words like cleansing big groups of people. 80 million is not just, a small, big group. It's a monstrous group. 80 million is massive. 80 million is almost 3 times the size of all of Canada as far as population. It is an enormous amount of people. Maybe people in America, think about it like, 80 million, America is what, 230, 240. But that is a huge, huge amount of people. And these are the people that are saying that, they have suspicions, they have questions, and you're not even allowed to ask questions anymore. It wasn't bad enough with scientism exposed when all of a sudden they get upset with you even just asking questions about the science model or the empirical method. Right now, it is right across the board. You're not allowed to ask questions on anything. And as I've said in my many documentaries, that the science dictatorship, the elite of scientism would step forward and they would become the arbiters of truth. They would start leading in that way. And what we're seeing is this is what's going on. I mean, continually with this entire virus thing, all of a sudden they've stepped into such a monstrous level that the scientists or the scientific establishment were telling people, we think it's best that people stay home. Period. We think it's best that the businesses close down. They were closing down business, telling people to stay home. This is an immense amount of power. I don't think people realize exactly how big a power structure we're dealing with when it comes to what is happening in America and around the world with the Great Reset agenda. And that's why I think that, we are on the cusp of even worse things that are about to take place. I'm not talking about the moral degrade of society. I'm talking about economically, fiscally. When you look at the stock market, all the stuff that was happening with Robinhood and these stocks and another, just exposing what a lot of us already knew that, it's corrupt. It's corrupt. But these people were starting to lose. So then they changed the rules of the game. But now they're going to start clamping down harder and harder and harder. And unfortunately, this is the stuff that we always kind of warned about. These are the things that we always saw, possibly happening in our lifetime, maybe in 10, 20 years. But guys, it's here now. It is here now. There is no mistaking what is taking place. This is not, fear talk. This isn't just getting all excited about, exaggerating a situation. The situation is very, very dire as far as the amount of control and power that they have. So the question is, what is it we do? And as Christians, as believers, we definitely need to keep on our knees in prayer and really pray for the country. We need to pray for the leaders. We need to continually bring God to this forefront of the conversation because it is Him alone that truly, truly does affect change. And anyone can be changed with the Holy Spirit. There is nobody that is not susceptible to that. Let's continue on. I want to get into it. I know some people, are wondering, how come you're playing all this Glenn Beck stuff? Glenn Beck has done an enormous amount of research. And as you have all these different things that are out there. But when you start actually connecting the dots, when you start to see play by play, everything that's coming together, you're going to start to see that framework coming together. And also you will see how truly it has been completed. And also what they're planning for with these horrifying climate change, ideals that they're going to be bringing forth. And they mean business this time. It's not like, oh, you don't believe in climate change. Oh, you're a science denier. No, you're a science denier. We need to lock you up or put you in a cage or a re-education camp. This is serious talk. This is what they're saying. We need to look at it as very, very serious what's going on. So I want to go to another part of what Glenn Beck was running through, and this was getting into, Obama's radical transformation of America is now complete. And you're going to see exactly what he kind of initiated and also how Biden is completing that and has completed that and now moving forward towards Agenda 2030 and the Great Reset. Everything is in place. This is historic. This is an incredible time in history. 2020, 2021. We are living through an extraordinary period of history. Understand that whatever, is communicated, the conversations you have, shows that I'm doing, these things will be recorded. People will be playing these back and understanding what we understood at this moment in time.
It has been the honor of my life to serve you. I won't stop. In fact, I will be right there with you for all my remaining days.
Yikes. Obama left the White House in 2017, but the ghost of his administration continued to haunt those hallways for years to come. Now, with their beloved VP in power, those ghosts are reappearing once more. Obama and his groupies have found the perfect puppet to finalize their radical plans. And those plans are already well underway.
We need to make equity and justice part of what we do every day.
Wait a minute.
Already signed more than a dozen executive orders.
What happened to the Joe Biden that believed this?
Things you can't do by executive order unless you're a dictator. We're a democracy. We need consensus.
Obama is what happened. His radical minions is what happened. And the president that is so dangerously malleable to the wishes of his party is what happened. And now, thanks to their masterful planning, they're inching one step closer to enacting the Great Reset.
I see the need for action. I see the need for a Great Reset.
A proposal that will change not only America, but it will change the world forever. Goodbye, private property. Goodbye, free market capitalism. Goodbye to the American dream that has defined this nation since its birth. Tonight, I'll show you how Obama's radicals are pulling the strings to make sure this Biden administration follows along to a T. I'll show you how it's begun in coordinated steps from Davos to the White House. Tonight, how Biden will complete Obama's radical transformation of America.
I think I just peed my pants just a little. Tonight's episode, a little bit spooky. We are now 2 weeks into Joe Biden's administration, and the fundamental question that we all need to be asking tonight is, who's really running things right now? I want to start here. I've played this before, but listen to John Kerry.
Are we expecting too much too soon from the new president, or is it going to deliver first day on these topics?
The answer to your question is no, you're not expecting too much. And yes, it will happen. And I think it will happen with greater speed and with greater intensity than a lot of people might imagine.
It's going to be great. They're not talking about everybody gets a lollipop. They're talking about the Great Reset. That's climate czar John Kerry, who now also sits on the National Security Council, speaking at the World Economic Forum on Biden's intentions for the Great Reset, the global plan to use the coronavirus and climate change to forever fundamentally transform society as we know it. I'm going to show you another video. This comes from the World Economic Forum. It has been deleted once people started freaking out, mainly about this. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Oh, you mean I don't have any possessions, but what do I do? How do I mean, do I get clothes, a car? Who owns that? Yeah. See, you may not have any possessions, but they will be owned by someone, giant corporations and the government in a private public partnership. GM will own the fleet of cars and you'll forever lease them. You will forever be a consumer because that's how they see you. Is this what we want for our country? Is this the life you want for your children and your grandchildren? Because this is exactly what John Kerry told the World Economic Forum that Joe Biden's administration would hasten with, quote, greater speed and greater intensity than people imagine. All we have to do is get it up to 88 miles an hour. ownership shifting from the people to co-opt between big corporations and big government used to be something the left condemned. Used to be things that I would think, oh, that's movies. Crony capitalism is every reason why we hate government and don't trust corporations. It's how a politician can never hold a real job, spend nearly 50 years as an elected official, and somehow or another magically become a millionaire, along with the rest of his family. How's that work? Here at home, it's kept quiet, but in places like Eastern Europe, Russia, and China, it is now considered the way things work. It's called an oligarchy, and Democrats are hoping to use Biden's administration as the catalyst to shift the power from you, the people, to them, the corporations and governments of the world. That's what the Great Reset is really all about, and it's a path that we have been on for a very long time. Today, the excuse to merge business with government is the coronavirus and climate change. But it's no different than it was in the 1930s, just different reasons. 1930s, progressives were a lot more old-fashioned. The Great Depression was their vehicle for change, and boy, did we get it. There's a reason why the modern left idolizes FDR so much, and it has nothing to do with World War II. FDR orchestrated a catastrophic change in the American experiment. Do you remember this scene from Back to the Future 2 when Doc Brown talks to Marty and he's using the chalkboard because, of course, I mean, you have to show on a chalkboard and explain everything, how you can go from past and then never really be able to get to the original timeline. Well, this is Doc and Marty's timeline in America. If we were to start in 1791 when we all thought, let's put together a document to make a more perfect nation. Not a perfect one, but it would continue to grow, and maybe someday we'll get to maximum freedom and the maximum people that are living their dreams, okay? The most security. Well, we were never supposed to become an oligarchy, but the reality now is that FBR is now Biff. I mean, Biff owns the casino, married to Lorraine. It's a nightmare. America's trajectory shattered with FDR, sending us on a new path. There was a couple of reasons. First, in 1917, Woodrow Wilson, I hate that guy, we had a policy in America, an understanding, no foreign entanglements. That's their business, stay out of it. But at this time, in World War I, the left over in Europe wanted to reset all of Europe, so they were all for World War I. Wilson was on board too. We got in, we created a central bank, to protect the people. Well, that was a disaster, and it set us up for World War II and the Great Depression. Now we had new reasons. Now we have World War I, World War II, small government was under, we were all under local control. That was the best way to do it. And FDR started something called the NRA. It is the National Recovery Administration, the Blue Eagle. It pulled together private businesses, unions, and the government all together. Sound anything like what's happening today? Well, it was all in the name of fairness and equity, which is different than equality. Sound familiar again? With this new public-private partnership, same language as we use today, the federal government was able to tell business owners how much they could pay their workers, what they could or couldn't sell, what they could or couldn't grow, and at what price they could sell things. The Supreme Court, thank God, declared it unconstitutional 2 years later. But much of it was snuck in anyway when Congress passed the Wagner Act in 1935. Now, if I happened to have a radio or TV show back in 1935, nobody would be watching the TV because it wasn't out yet, but different story. I would be going after FDR for blatant plagiarism because somebody had already done all of this. They put private businesses and government together and codified it into law. They did it 5 years earlier. It was called the National Council of Corporations, and it was established by Benito Mussolini, the fascist. But listen to me carefully. Forget the terms like socialism and National Socialism. Outside of people like Bernie Sanders or AOC, no one in the Democratic Party will say them. They're smarter than that. And if we want to stop what's coming, we have to stop using those terms as well. Tonight, I'll show you proof that we should be calling this an oligarchy. But they're modeling everything on China. And China hasn't been communist for a long time. They are an oligarchy, where the elites fall into two classes: the billionaire CEOs and their corporations, and the government collaborators. Everybody else, the 1.3 billion people in China, are their subjects, are consumers, and nobody cares about them. Don't worry, you'll own nothing, and you'll be happy. Now, it took 20 years on our altered timeline, but Eisenhower finally spoke up. Ike's farewell address famously called out the military-industrial complex, but most people never understood his broader point. He wasn't calling out the growing power of the military alone, but the combination of government and private businesses. Ike called the danger of the Great Reset and what Democrats are currently trying to do perfectly back in the 1950s. Quote, "The prospect of domination of our nation's scholars by federal employment, project allocations, and the power of money is ever present and is gravely to be regarded. Public policy," he said, "could itself become the captive of scientific, technological elite." Wow, if that's not Babe Ruth pointing out where he's going to hit the home run, I don't know what is. How many government officials and their friends and family have gotten rich off of climate change, the push to go green? How many people got rich in government when the medical industry stepped in with the government? How about universities? What about the military-industrial project? This is what happened. We had World War II. We started doing public-private partnerships with the NRA. Then after World War II, we had the bomb. Now we were trapped. Everybody's freaking out. We have to have the bomb. We could all be dead in 11 minutes. So the government can't go back to the original timeline. We have to get bigger. We didn't have a standing army until after World War II. And then in the 1960s, something else changed. Let me ask you this. Let me go back to the public-private partnership. Why did Biden kill the XL Keystone Pipeline? Did he consult with anybody in South Dakota? Did he talk to any of the workers on the pipeline? Was it really for the environment? Because the transport of all that oil is just going to be moved on to the railroad tracks, which is much more dangerous. And much of that will be transported by Warren Buffett's BNSF Railroad. Buffett's about to pile on a few more billions to his stash. Now, I'm sure this little government favor had nothing to do at all with his relationship with Biden. You know, back in October, he told some donors at a fundraiser, quote, "I just got off the phone with Warren Buffett talking about how we're in a position, unlike we were 50, 70, 80 years ago, to lead the whole damn world in a way that no one else can." How? How come we're not having that conversation? And I wonder if that conversation also mentioned the piles of money Buffett would make once Biden killed the Keystone Pipeline. See, he doesn't consult with us, but he consults with them. If the media wasn't in bed with the government, they'd ask that question. This is exactly the kind of crap we need to keep our eyes on. It's why we don't trust anything. Everything will be done in the name of safety, equity, or conservation. Meanwhile, the billions will continue to flow and the oligarchy will grow. Ike's warning lasted a very short time. One president. After Kennedy was killed, LBJ came in and he doubled down on Biff's or FDR's transformation. LBJ took this, the central banks, the foreign entanglement, the World War II, the government growing, the bomb, and he added something else. The Great Society, education, plus we were now the global police. Oh, plus in 1972 or 73, we became the global consumer. We became America's bank. We were the biggest lender, and we were a consumer. And we had a war on poverty. So we were the global police and the war on poverty. Well, that's the framework, because we just took all of this and put it together. Now it's all failed. Great Society didn't work. Global police didn't work. The global consumer, I don't want to be that. The global bank, are you kidding me? Look at the state of our banks. Do you believe in them? Do you think any of these endless wars and foreign entanglements have worked? None of this is working. And yet, we went off the timeline, and now they're saying, let's put all of this together in even a bigger package, a global great reset, where we have the police and all of the bailouts for the Great Society and the war under control. It's going to be great with all of our corporations. Wow. Biff's Casino, here we come. If LBJ and FDR set the framework, Obama came to seal the deal. And Biden, with Obama's core people, will finish it off once and for all. And I'll show you how next. Okay. Boy, I had Harry Dent on today. Holy cow. He's an economist. That was the scariest hour I have done. He's talking about what he sees coming in the next 45 days. And he thinks all of this is going to blow up in the next 45 days, economically. I hope to God not. But he may be right. He's been so right in the past. Please, 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 please refinance your loan right now. If you're paying 3 or 4% on your mortgage or more, you are way overpaying. The credit card debt. You don't like to think about it, I know, but what are you paying in percent? What are they charging you every month? Plain and simple, if you're a homeowner, it's about the best thing you can do. Refinance your mortgage. Get a consolidation loan. The people at American Financing can walk you through what that might look like. They're not in it for the bank. They're in it for you. I want you to do this, please, tonight or tomorrow. Please. You can save an awful lot of money. And you've got to get your financial house in order. 800-906-2440. Go to AmericanFinancing.net. I want to ask you, if you will, if you would help us at the Blaze TV. I'm going to tell you about some czars coming up, but there's also talk now this week of a new reality czar. You know, and I thought, maybe they're going to just worry about, what really happened on Survivor Island, if that's even on TV. No, it's reality, not like a reality show. Reality. And it's made up of experts and government officials. And a government official will tell you what's real and what's not. Oh, well, that's fixed the trust. I can guarantee you we will not be a part of the reality crew when the czar gets into office. Please join us at Blaze TV. I know we sweat to get it right. We correct it when we get it wrong. I know that Mark Levin and Steven Crowder does that. I know Dave Rubin. We all do. Join us, blazetv.com/Glenn. Use the promo code Glenn. You're going to save 30%. Please do it now if you're not already a subscriber. We need you. Without getting into details, because I'm going to one day, because it was a bizarre meeting. I actually had dinner at my Airbnb in Los Angeles. And I had dinner with a member of Obama's staff who I didn't get along with, and he didn't get along with me. It was an interesting dinner. He told me a lot of interesting things, like back then, a lot of people were really pissed at Obama. He had all the right people in place. He had full control of Congress, but he failed to deliver on everything they originally set out to do. He set out instead, once he got in, to become rich and a power player. He started listening to the Clinton people, and it all began to derail for anybody who was actually a believer in what he said. Now, that's a frightening thought. I just showed you how much of the country has radically changed, but it could have been worse. Oh, yes, it could have been. I know. I had dinner with one of the architects. All the right people were in place, and surprise, surprise, they're back in the White House with Biden, except for this advisor. He's no longer radical enough. This time, they are not screwing around. If you thought it was bad under Obama, get ready for what they wanted to do but they're going to do it at a hyper-accelerated pace. The Obama administration emphasized radical differences and destroyed race relations. Black Lives Matter began under his watch. They also jumped on board with the UN Agenda 21, centering U.S. policy around a radical green climate agenda. They created new government positions, like, remember Van Jones, the green czar, who would sometimes hint that climate change was racial justice, and they were linked. Jones would go about greening the ghetto. He would talk about reducing poverty while saving the planet. Well, Biden didn't bring Van Jones back, but he did take Obama's former EPA head, Gina McCarthy. She's the new White House climate czar. Similar to Jones' position, yet that's another made-up job at the White House that you don't really know what they do. And if you thought the Obama administration's ridiculous hints at social justice and climate change were linked, listen to this from McCarthy.
Climate change is an intersectional issue, and I'm going to tell you why. Climate change is a racial justice issue because it exacerbates the challenges in the communities that have been left behind. It goes after the very same communities that pollution has held back and racism has held back.
Yeah. Well, if you thought COVID was smart, you know how it cleverly knows to infect people in like restaurants or gyms, but not movie sets or in Walmart. COVID ain't got nothing on climate change. Together, it colludes with pollution and racism to hold people back. Kind of sounds like a scary Stephen King novel. Before anyone was talking about the Great Reset, the Obama administration was helping set it up by pushing the global Paris Agreement. Then Secretary of State John Kerry was instrumental in crafting and adoption. But Trump pulled out and the left just freaked out. The Paris Agreement, we got to have that. Why? Precursor to the Great Reset. And of course, Biden is rejoining it. In essence, the Paris Agreement places a foreign government body in control of our policies. The Heritage Foundation ran the numbers and found that the regulations we'd be subject to would destroy hundreds of thousands of jobs. But don't worry, it's good. It's good for the environment. It would harm manufacturing and kill $2.5 trillion in GDP by 2035. But don't worry, you don't have anything to buy because you're not going to own anything. The agreement requires the participant countries to provide $100 billion a year. Obama authorized $1 billion of your taxpayer dollars that was sent to the fund. There was zero authorization from Congress, but who needs that anymore? And all that money, what's it used for? Well, it's used to fund, and I quote, green energy and pay for other climate adaptation and mitigation programs. Oh, well, don't get too specific. It's all sciencey and stuff. As I showed you in multiple other shows, companies are already being forced to adhere to the government's climate agenda. Financial institutions like Blackrock won't even lend money to a corporation unless they stay in line. Now, some of those companies will get funding directly from this multi-government slush fund, a government corporate oligarchy that has been in plan for years. It was no surprise at all when Biden brought back Obama's Secretary of State that led the Paris Agreement charge. John Kerry has been named Special Presidential Envoy for Climate. Why just have the climate czar when you can have a special envoy for the climate, too? McCarthy clearly got the better title, but John Kerry will actually sit on the National Security Council. I told you they're not playing around anymore. Now it's national security. The failures of Obama's green climate agenda will look like kittens play. I'm going to go through Biden's executive actions on climate change later in the show, but as of now, and this figure will probably go up, his plan will cost $2 trillion. We're already up to our eyeballs in debt, but did anybody care when Trump was spending it? So why not double it? They're going to add another $2 trillion. And what about taxes? But Biden has been adamant that no families making under $400,000 a year would see their taxes increased. So how exactly does that jive with Biden's Commerce Secretary, what they said last week when she was asked if she would support an increase in the gas tax?
I, as governor, am deeply in touch with how much increasing bills affect the average American family. Having said that, we do need to meet the climate change challenge, and we need funds for improved infrastructure, better roads, safer bridges, and which also creates jobs. So I would look to balance those interests and work as a piece of the president's team.
Isn't it amazing how carefully they have to watch every single word? They know, they just don't want you to know. So what she just said there, if I can translate, bullcrap into English, yeah, get ready to pony up. We got a climate to save. And if taxes aren't enough, they'll find other ways to take your money. Obama tapped Janet Yellen to run the Fed, and Biden has brought her on to head up the Treasury. Yellen has been holding virtual listening tours with companies all across the country. She's not talking to you, companies. Check out what she's been emphasizing. Quote, the need to create equitable growth using the tools of the Treasury Department to combat climate change and rebuild regulatory institutions. Seriously? We're going through the worst economic crisis in years and in decades, and that's what they're focused on? Really? The Obama domestic policy was a catastrophe, printing insane amounts of money while simultaneously wasting it on green projects that mostly flopped. His lefty rhetoric saw the rise of Occupy Wall Street and BLM. So hopefully Biden didn't bring any Obama retreads into domestic policy, because that would be, oh no, Susan Rice is back. I'll make your head explode. Pick an Obama-era scandal, and you'll usually find Rice right at the center of it. Maybe now that she's back in the White House, she can tell us what she really meant by blaming Benghazi on a YouTube video. And these people are going to tell us what's true and what's not. Maybe she can explain that mysterious email she sent to herself on Trump's inauguration day, where she said Obama told intelligence and law enforcement heads that basically he said, hey, we did everything the book, we didn't have you guys, you don't have to look. We didn't do anything illegal, right? I mean, that's really. Can she also explain why she was unmasking the names of Trump officials and how those names were getting leaked to the media? I mean, I could list the rest of her scandals. But, we need to increase the time of the show to maybe, 60 minutes to 60 days. But let's forget about her shadiness for a second. Rice has zero experience in domestic policy. Her entire career has focused on foreign policy. Is that maybe because we're going through a color revolution here and she's got plenty of experience? I mean, what else could she possibly be there for? I find it hard to believe the GOP would make it easy for Rice to get confirmed in the Senate if her position required it. Is that the reason why she was given this job? The head of Domestic Policy Council doesn't require Senate confirmation. So what is her real job? Is it to run cover for all of her boss's mistakes? Because that is a full-time job, and she has experience in it. If they're all about to shred the Constitution in the name of COVID and climate change, Susan Rice, she might come in handy. There are more Obama retreads in the Biden administration than I have time for. I didn't even get to the foreign policy people. People like Anthony Blinken, Victoria Nuland, all the names that we had on our chalkboard, during the Biden scandal. They're all back with Biden, and they're all around while we were destroying Libya, arming terrorists in Syria, and supporting a coup in Ukraine. Are we really supposed to believe that now everything will be different? Why does it feel like all the people that Obama gathered to fundamentally transform this country have now made it back with Biden? They are the ones that will make sure the letdown from Obama won't happen this time. What we're definitely now seeing is that Obama, what he started, is currently being consumed at pursued at a hyper accelerated pace. Last week, Biden launched an unprecedented amount of executive actions. Guess what also was happening at the exact same time? Leaders from around the world gathered virtually to discuss one thing. You won't believe these were happening at real time. And in fact, those global leaders got news about our country before you did. Back in a minute. I want to talk to you about rough greens. This is my wife in our torn up house. Go ahead and play this, will you? There's our dog running. He never ran to his bowl like that. Look at him wagging his tail, waiting for the rough greens to be fed to him. He is a completely different dog. I know we live like trailer trash. Redoing the house. But he is happy. He is healthy. This is not a dog food. This is a supplement that you put on your dog's food. It's jam-packed with minerals and vitamins, antioxidants, omega oils, probiotics, all the crap that you're supposed to eat, but you don't want to. I don't know why they can't make it taste good for us humans, but they love it. Dogs love it. You care about your dog. I know I care about mine. If you're feeding your dog, especially dry kibble, you have to add this. You really do. See the difference in your dog. Get the Rough Greens Jumpstart bag today just for $14.95. Start the process of getting your dog healthier and happier. Make sure that they like it. And then buckle up to see your dog thrive again. Just go to roughgreens.com/Beck. That's ruffgreens.com/Beck. Coming up in just a second, I'm going to take you back to 2018 or 19, where I made a prediction. And I think everybody on my staff thought I was nuts. But you tell me if it hasn't come true. And if it has, look out, because I know what's coming next. We're going to do that in a minute. Last week, as Joe Biden was busy setting a number of records, breaking all of them on executive orders, yay for unity, the World Economic Forum convened to discuss the Great Reset. And it gave us a unique opportunity to see the Great Reset leaders in Davos talk theory while Joe Biden's administration began taking actual action on that policy. The typical high-level players all made an appearance. I mean, look at the list of headliners: the president of the European Commission, the heads of state from France, Germany, Singapore, China, India, the financial heads from the European Central Bank and the International Monetary Fund. But it's no big deal. Fact checkers there have, let us know that the WEF has no real power. I mean, sure. Leave out the fact that every major country and company in the world, including the UN, are participating, so you can see how ridiculous it is to say these people have any power. Last Wednesday, our own special envoy on climate, John Kerry, dialed into the conference, and here's what he said.
Let me just say to you, President Biden is totally committed to this fight. He understands what we're up against. And that's why he ran on the most ambitious, comprehensive climate platform of any presidential candidate in U.S. history. It's why he made Building Back Better, investing in clean energy and clean transportation to create millions of jobs. He made it a pillar of his campaign and now a centerpiece of his presidency. It's the reason today, 1 week into the job, the President Biden will sign another series of executive orders that continue to advance his climate agenda.
Here's what's interesting. I want you to keep in mind, the last time Kerry spoke with the World Economic Forum, he said Biden would pursue the Great Reset more rapidly than people would realize. Now, last week, he reaffirmed that at full speed ahead. And his invocation of Building Back Better isn't even Biden's slogan. They got it from the Great Reset and the World Economic Forum. But remember, the WEF has no real power. There's nothing to worry about here. So while we were watching this, not 2 hours later in the White House, they announced a new set of executive actions specifically on climate change. Now, I want you to think about that here for a second. The World Economic Forum, the global leaders, all of those people in Davos found out about our climate initiatives before you did. Who are they serving? Biden's orders include declaring climate change as a national security priority. This is kind of a big deal, which is about a millimeter from what we all know is coming. Climate change is a national emergency. Then you can suspend all kinds of constitutional rules. I actually expected them to declare it last week. So, hey, there's 1 point for Joe Biden. The full list reads like a declaration of war. It orders every federal agency to comply in some way or form, even including the Director of National Intelligence. It establishes a brand new office called the White House Office of Domestic Climate Policy, as well as the National Climate Task Force. What, are they going to grapple down Niagara Falls? Yeah, got to shut this water down, wasting too much. What is that? Imagine if we could get this kind of attention on aliens. We'd be taking vacations in Andromeda this summer instead of Cancun. Oh, you can't go there. The orders contained a lot more, including the conservation of 30% of all federal land and oceans by 2030. That's a really big deal we should talk about sometime. The cancellation of new oil and gas leases on public lands and waters. But I am also really interested in little things like this. The establishment of the Civilian Climate Corps Initiative. Sound familiar? We exposed this at Fox and they shut that down. FDR did something similar in 1933. They created a Civilian Conservation Corps facing insane unemployment, around 25-30%. The federal government put people to work and they were like, here, go out, plant some trees, do other things, build some parks. Now, I pretty much don't agree with FDR on anything. But hey, I mean, you got 30% unemployment. That's insane. You got to do something. Okay. But we don't have 30% unemployment. How is it something like this is even justified? Current unemployment is sitting at 6.7%. And there's more states that have lower than 6.7, you know, if they're the ones that open back up. Details on what people are actually going to be paid and what they're actually going to be doing in the Climate Corps, kind of vague, but the last line in the description says they will be, quote, addressing the changing climate. Oh. So does that mean they'll be working for the government or maybe a public-private partnership, one of these subsidized companies, while at the same time getting their paychecks from the federal government? Oligarchy much? Let's say you're one of the companies that doesn't play ball. You're going to have to compete with other companies that are getting federal subsidies and possibly some free labor on the side. Somehow, I don't think this new Climate Corps is just going to be, you know, hopping around planting trees. Maybe I'm wrong. Biden's flurry of executive orders is insane. He signed 40 in 2 weeks. Now, you know, it's uncanny how similar Biden's actions line up exactly with what was being spoken about simultaneously over at the World Economic Forum. It's weird. Kind of like his barrage of executive orders on equity. You know, I kind of thought discrimination was already illegal, but what the heck? Let's sign a few more orders. Not for redundancy, but for the sweet virtue of it all. Equity and racial justice were two of the main topics covered on the Great Reset. One was the featured panels that was incorporating critical race theory, although they didn't call it that, with economics. It's lunacy. Watch this excerpt.
We need a new industrial policy that centers workers, that centers people, both domestically and abroad, coupled with explicitly anti-racist and anti-sexist economic rights.
Okay. Do we really need that? I mean, really, a new industrial policy to address racism? I mean, sorry to sound like a boomer here, but this is commie bullcrap. You know what I'm saying? Just a little bit. What they're trying to sell is the system is so racist, we need a global entity to help tear it down. Oh, and workers of the world unite. The person speaking is Derek Hamilton. He's a professor at the New School for Social Research. It might as well be known as Progressive University or Communist U. Hamilton was also the economic advisor to Bernie Sanders. These are the experts the WEF brought together to sell the Great Reset. To who? Not you. They're not even slightly trying to hide what their political ideology is. It's important, though. They're not going for Marxism. They are using Marxists. They are going for an oligarchy. Some of the wording and terminology used in Biden's executive orders look like they were copied over from what was going on in Davos. The Great Reset folks want us all to know that COVID response should be evidence-based. Well, file this under thanks, Captain Obvious. But evidence-based is not really how I would describe the world's response to the coronavirus. You? Likewise, Biden wants us all to know when it comes to science, quote, evidence-based policymaking and evidence-based decisions, that's what we're all about. Okay, all right. Well, maybe you can do that now with the unborn and gender. If we weren't running out of time, I'd wait. Back in a minute. Yes, Built Bar is the secret for me keeping a body like this. You got to work hard on it. Get up early every day, and you don't know what it takes not to exercise. I've gotten to the point where I'm indulging in something really yummy. I have a sweet resolution. Built Bar is the answer. Go to BuiltBar.com. Use the promo code Beck. Get 20% off your next order. Promo code Beck for 20% off at BuiltBar.com. So the Great Reset Conference theme this year was all about building trust. The World Economic Forum is facing a serious hurdle there. You see, for an oligarchy to be successful, you kind of need to bring together both government and private businesses. But there's one problem. No one trusts anybody anymore, especially the government. I want to show you a chalkboard of mine I did several years ago, and it started out where I told my staff, it was like 2017, 2018, I said, we have to watch for these things. I boiled them all down to this. Polarization and civil unrest, critical stage, 1930s European levels, Nazis, Antifa, right and left extremes. I'd say we have that one. Economic destabilization, critical stage, central bank failure, stock market plunge, price collapse. I think this is coming, but I also think it came in a different way. It didn't hit the top, it hit the bottom with COVID. Then tech disruption. Critical stage, jobs, finance, communication, and privacy. You got a problem with privacy? How are we communicating? Are they cutting anybody off yet? And all of because of COVID, a lot of those jobs that are going to be lost are already starting to change. The big one here, so I would say we have somewhat this. This one, the trust implosion. I said, I don't know when this is happening, and I don't know if they're going to go in order, but this is the one I really worried about, the trust implosion. It was going to include government, media, tech, finance, justice, corporation, and education. I'd say a big check on that one. That would lead to all of these people needing each other and protect against you. So they would all form together to merge into what I said was a new world order. Didn't know at the time it would be called the Great Reset. That's it. The trust implosion would be the final catalyst for change. It's interesting how the WEF themed their conference this year, Building Trust. This is a trust barometer used by the World Economic Forum. I want you to take a look at their version of my chalkboard. Look at this. They go all the way back. You have it? There it is. They go all the way back to 2001 with public trust in corporations breaking in 2009. Their solution in 2011 was the merging of business with the government. But there's a huge problem. The trust in government plummeted in 2012. By 2021, they declared full-on information bankruptcy. That's this year. In other words, no one trusts anything or anyone anymore. That's true. But their solution is merging business with government, media with the government. This is the exact same thing I saw coming, and I was warning, but they are saying this is going to be good. It's not. They want so badly to convince you that the government and corporations can be trusted. They need your consent when industries like Silicon Valley finally made it official to sign a deal with Washington. Listen to this from Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff at the conference.
In the pandemic, it was CEOs in many cases all over the world who were the heroes. They are the ones who stepped forward with their financial resources, their corporate resources, their employees, their factories, and pivoted rapidly, not for profit, but to save the world.
So they saved the world. They also saved their corporations and made an awful lot of money. But the little guy, he did nothing but sit at home and not work. They were the heroes? Okay, the first high-profile speaker on day one of last week's conference was the Chinese president. I kid you not. And I believe there's a very specific reason for that. During his speech, he warned of a new Cold War and stressed the importance of working together. Then he laid out a 4-step plan to moving forward, which included macroeconomic policy coordination. The World Economic Forum was giddy. They posted that speech all over the place. But they left off one thing. The fact that the Chinese president also said the world needed to stop interfering in China's internal affairs. In other words, we do business with each other. Just look the other way when we commit genocide on our own people. The Great Reset. Those people want the world to emulate China's economic model, but they conveniently ignore their human rights abuse. I have a little question for them. What do you expect from an authoritarianism? The human rights abused every single time there's an autocrat in. Because China sees their people as consumers only. That's where the world is going. I've been sounding the alarm over financial institutions, especially lately Blackrock, who has multiple people right at the presidential level with the Biden administration. They are advising the Federal Reserve who to invest in the stock market. Now, they've said publicly that they're going to stop giving money to companies that don't adhere to their climate agenda. Their CEO, who was a candidate for the Treasury Department, spoke at the conference last week on how much they're looking to spend to pull all of this off.
We're going to need $50 trillion of investing to get to a net zero world. And so it's not a small price tag, but the opportunity is going to be large.
$50 trillion. Just so you know, if we took all the money that every corporation, every person made every year for the year's GDP, the global GDP, put it all in one big pile, it'd be $37 trillion. Are we going to print our way to the Great Reset? By the way, BlackRock just changed their policy. If you don't abide by climate change rules, they're not going to invest in you. Coca-Cola announced yesterday, listen to it on our program, that they're also not going to do business with you if you don't have equity rules. It's insane what's happening. It's an end run around the Constitution. And by the way, if you don't think your taxes are going to go up, really, figure that one out.
So things are going to get crazy. 2021. This is February 6th, 2021. You were listening to Celebrate Truth Radio. I'm your host, Robbie Davidson. Thank you so much for staying tuned to the special broadcast this evening, episode 97. Next week, same time, same place, will be episode 98, getting so close to that 100-mile mark. It's going to be exciting. I appreciate every one of you that tuned in tonight. Thank you for tuning in on YouTube. We've got a lot more guests coming up here in 2021. We got to get serious. There's a lot of stuff taking place. If you're not familiar with Celebrate Truth on YouTube, it's youtube.com/Celebrate Truth. There's a 24/7 live stream that takes place. Tune in. You'll learn the difference between science and scientism, and you'll understand how critical it is in this time to see the lies of scientism, the agenda that it is, and how strong and powerful it's becoming to take over the world. Part of the Great Reset, scientism will play a huge part. We're seeing this happen with all these initiatives. We're seeing this happening with COVID. All the time, the scientists are coming forward. You can't be a scientism denier. That's what they should be saying, but they're saying you're a science denier. No. We're definitely not science deniers. We believe in true, real, empirical science. Only problem is most of the world isn't doing anything close to what real science is. It's time to ask questions. There's never a problem asking questions, although they would have you think different, saying there's no asking questions. The science is settled. Science is not settled. And it's definitely not settled when it comes to COVID. It's definitely not settled when it comes to climate change. The raging debate they're pushing forward to transform the world is only beginning. It's happening. It has started on such a grand scale. Hopefully everyone's praying. They're getting prepared. I have many broadcasts. Tune in. Look at my Celebrate Truth Radio playlist. I've got piles and piles and piles of stuff on the Great Reset, getting equipped when it comes to financial. Look into precious metals, gold and silver. That's something that you definitely need to look into. Also, cryptocurrency. A lot of people have misconceptions, thinking, oh my goodness, it's all evil. You don't know what you're talking about. Start looking into cryptocurrency, look into decentralization, understand the difference and what they're about to create. They are creating, it is coming to be, where I would imagine in the next 5 years, everyone is going to have some sort of cryptocurrency. The question is, What do you choose to be in? You have a choice. They hate it. They can't do anything about it. They're going to compete against it. They're going to come up with their global currencies, their digital currencies, their cryptocurrencies, whether it's government, bank, who knows? The question is, look outside of the financial matrix. Look outside of the matrix. Be prepared. Be prayerful. Obviously love your neighbor, and honestly do what Jesus has commanded us to do, to go out there and preach the good news, the Great Commission. No matter what happens, how dark this world gets, we are the light. Greater is he that is in you than he who is in the world. Remember that, because that is truth. Good night, everyone. Blessings to you. We'll talk to you soon.